Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an amazing upload to share with you. It is an updated version of an experience that I had just shared a couple of days ago. This being with the actual person that went through the event instead of a second-hand account. Before we get into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative upload I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? Okay, so on the 8th of September, I had gotten an email from a young woman who wanted to share an experience with me. We finally were able to connect, and she wanted to share an experience that happened to her best friend's brother in Mount Shasta. And he had been camping out there, disappeared for 11 days. A park ranger had gone missing. One of their friends had gone missing as well after he had made his way out of Mount Shasta region. And he really hasn't shared the experience with too many people. His parents don't even know the full detail. His sister, Jackie, we will refer to these people as Jackie, his sister. His name is Kyle. That is not his real name. His girlfriend at the time would be Sarah, and the girl who reached out to me, her name was Crystal. They are all from the Redding, California region, and back in 1996, the exact month was June. It was the first week of June, to be exact. Kyle had decided that he was going to go solo camping up in Mount Shasta. Now, when Crystal reached out to me, this was like third-hand accounts, because Kyle had opened up one evening at a campfire or a little bonfire that he, his sister, and his girlfriend were all sitting around. And he kind of blurted out everything because he hadn't been acting the same since. His sister, Jackie, reached out to her best friend, Crystal, the girl who reached out to me, and shared basically, not verbatim, but secondhand, the account that she heard that night at the bonfire. Mind you, there was no alcohol or any kind of other drugs involved during that night or even during the experience. So she reached out and shared with me back in 96, if you lived in the Redding, California region, there was about a month from like the early May to the end of June, or end of May to early end of May, end of June, there was a announcement. It was a public service announcement stating that there was an escaped or a fugitive on the run, not an escaped convict, a fugitive on the run in the Mount Shasta area, the Redding area, please be careful. Lock your doors. Do this, do that. There was no description of him, which was very strange, and no detail of why he was a fugitive. And that was very strange, even for the people back then. People were questioning it, like, what the hell did this guy do? Why don't we know what he looks like? You know? So for a month's period of time, people were in that area looking at strangers like that could be the fugitive. And it abruptly began and it abruptly stopped. So Kyle had decided that he wanted to go on a solo trip up into Mount Shasta, and he was going to camp where he and his dad had camped many years prior, right up in this area called Sulphur Spring. And it's a hike to get in there. So he would park at the Northgate Trailhead region and just hike up in there. It took about 2 days to get there. Now, per Crystal, what she knew at that point was only what she heard. So this is where I will now start with what I learned from Kyle last night. Crystal had reached out to Kyle and said, listen, I hope you don't mind. I did not share your real name, my real name, your sister's real name, anyone's real name, exact location of where we lived, grew up, this, and that. But I want you to hear this. I want you to listen to this. And she sent him a link to the video that I had done in regards to his experience. Now, he reached back out to her and said, hey, how can I get in touch with Jeff? I'd really like to talk to him and see what he knows and see what kind of ideas he has and share a little bit more of a clearer experience with him so he can share it with everyone else. So she gave him my email, and I almost didn't respond because it was very weird, just how it was worded. I really almost didn't, because if he hadn't said a certain thing, I probably wouldn't. If he hadn't mentioned something in regards to the night of the campfire, I would not have at all, because I would have been like, this is really strange. This is probably a hoax, someone trying to get some more info, or for me to break anonymity, you know. And I'm very careful with people's anonymity on this channel. Fortunately enough, I've never broken it. And I really take that anonymity, I take it to the extreme. No one deserves to be bothered if they don't want to be bothered by anyone. And so he did say what he said, and I sent him my phone number, and we ended up texting each other all day yesterday, and we set up a time, 10 p.m., and sure enough, promptly at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, he called me. And this is exactly what he shared with me. It's similar to what Crystal shared, but it's his experience firsthand, instead of him telling his sister and girlfriend and his sister telling her best friend and then her telling me. Now it comes straight from the source. So Kyle was very hyperactive as a kid. He and his dad used to go camping quite a bit. His dad actually brought him camping to on weekends and school weeks off and such, school vacations, to kind of keep him out of his mom's hair because he was that overactive. Everyone would call him ADD Kyle. And it was like a running joke. He didn't have ADD. He was just a young boy, teenager, just really loved camping, loved the outdoors. Any kind of outdoor sport he was into. He was not into school sports like football, basketball, and such. But hiking, kayaking, biking, anything that involved dirt and being in the woods, he was all about. So his dad would bring him to this location out in Mount Shasta, and they would hike in for a couple of days. They'd make it about a week trip, and they would park at this Northgate trailhead and go camping. So Kyle goes out, and initially, when he first made the decision to go, his family was worried because it was during that period of time. And he doesn't know if that public announcement has anything to do with anything that went on that 11 days, those 11 days, or a couple of weeks after. But it sure felt like it belonged in this very strange experience. So he makes the announcement, I'm going to go out in the next day or two, and I'm probably going to be gone, a week. Just, I want to get away. I'm going to be starting my new job. And I just, want a break from people and everything. So he decided to pack light. He always would bring his sleeping bag. But instead of packing a tent, he brought a tarp with some rope. And he'd fashion his own tent. He did always have bear spray. That was something his dad always told him to bring. And they always brought in a flare gun in case he had gotten lost. Now, something that Crystal didn't know, only Kyle and his dad would have known, was his dad had this old kind of survivor backpack 22 rifle thing. And his dad gave it to him that trip to bring with him, just in case he had gotten lost. He needed something for protection. Obviously, it's not going to take down a bear. It's a 22. But, if he gets lost, he can shoot a rabbit, shoot some squirrel. The loud percussion of the round going off may scare away a bear, a mountain lion, whatever. It was just a kind of a survival backpack rifle thing. He had that with him and some food, but he did plan on fishing a little bit for his food and possibly hunting for a little bit for his food. He really loved the outdoors. He was 22 at the time, and he parks at this Northgate trailhead and walks in. He gets about halfway and decides that he's going to camp right there for the night. And he was either going to stay in that location one night or possibly 2 nights. Now, he did end up staying 2 nights in that location. This is something that Crystal didn't know. She thought that he had hiked in, camped for the night, and then hiked back out, or hiked back up to where Sulphur Spring is. But he had stayed in this location for 2 nights. Very quiet location, remote. He had seen on the second day of being up there, he had seen a couple that apparently were day hiking. And he had passed them on a trail. He was camping off the trail just a little bit. almost to the point where no one could see him and he could barely see the trail. So he makes the next day out there. He's fishing in this little stream that's midway point to Sulphur Spring. Just having the time of his life. There is no kind of any paranormal. There is no strangeness. There is no noises. There is no silence. There is just tranquility. The second day, so he stays 2 nights at this location, and then he says, all right, I'm going to go up into Silver Spring and camp right there for the remainder of my time, except on the way back where I'll have to make a stop and camp. Because we are talking miles from the Northgate Trailhead. So he gets to Sulphur Spring area. He's about 8,500 feet in elevation. He's going to camp right at this location where he and his dad had camped many times before. There's an old fire pit that him and his dad had built. Nothing fancy, just some stones in a circle. And he knew where to set his tent. It was just familiar with him and had been for a long time. So he gets to his location up in Sulphur Spring and sets up his camp. Now, the day hike-in was smooth. He sets up, no issues. No issues setting up. He decided that he was going to have some dinner. And that rest of the night went completely smooth. He had no silence, nothing. Nothing to put him off in any way, to scare him, to make him go back out of there. So the next day he gets up and he's farting around, just doing his thing, whittling sticks, looking for something to do, just outside, hiking, whatever. And he, about close to dusk, kind of gets this weird feeling. And almost like he's being watched. But he doesn't hear anything and he doesn't see anything out of the ordinary. And he can still hear wildlife. He can still hear crickets. He can still hear birds. So he's not put off. He's just like, maybe it's just a creepy feeling for being so far out by myself. Right now I'm coming up on the 4th night of being up here. 2 nights spent down in the lower area. And now the second night he's here. And he's kind of cleaning up his mess from dinner, getting his bear bag set and such. And he notices a faint kind of humming off in the distance. And he's like, what the hell? What the hell is that noise? And he's kind of put off by it. He realizes that it sounds familiar to him, but he can't place it. It's this just kind of dull humming noise. And then he realizes that sounds like a generator. It sounds like some sort of engine, but not a four-wheeler, not a truck. And it's coming west. It's coming from the west, just outside of where he can almost hear. There's a lake out there called Sisson Lake. And he's like, is it maybe someone's up there with a pump? Who knows? Maybe someone's doing some illegal gold mining, whatever. But he's like, now he's put off a little bit because he had never heard any kind of noise, even with his dad. And then all of a sudden the forest goes silent, just silent. He stops, but he can hear that humming. He can't hear any crickets. He can't hear any birds. Now he can really hone in on where that humming is coming from. And he's like, all right, that is definitely coming west of me. It doesn't sound too far, a mile, 2 miles, maybe at that. I think I'm going to go out tomorrow and check it out and see, just what this noise is. Probably 20, 30 minutes go by and activity in the forest picks back up again. It's like a light switch. He at that point feels comfortable enough to go to bed, get in his sleeping bag and go to bed. Now, the humming had stopped as well. It was almost like at the same time the nature came back is the humming stopped. Just instantaneously and side by side, just done. Start. So now he is comfortable enough to go to bed. Fourth night up there, this is where Crystal, being third-hand account that Crystal told me, we were like at day 2 or 3, but he had been there for 4 days now. The night he falls asleep, everything's, smooth, quiet, not the Oz effect quiet, but comfortable. As he's in his sleeping bag, he is sleeping. He has this really strange dream. And he starts to, imagine or dream of this very tall looking humanoid. And it's in this robe, this white robe. He didn't feel any malice or any kind of malevolent intent. He noticed that the creature was bald. It didn't seem to have any kind of hair, any kind of eyebrow, just no hair. Very strange pointed ears, similar to Spock from Star Trek, and the robe. The arms were very long, and even though it was wearing a robe, he could tell that it was spindly. He was a good-sized kid at the time. He, being 22, he said he was like 6'1", maybe $190 during that period of time of his life, but he was a very athletic, very strong kid, and he could tell that this creature that he was dreaming about was obviously much taller than him in his dream, but very spindly. And it kind of approaches him in his dream, and he is in this clearing where he's camping. He's in his campsite area, and it says, we are Lemurian. We have been here longer than humans. I'm not here to hurt you, but we have been waiting for you. And it said, Kyle. And, his dream he doesn't remember much more than that. Just we are Lemurian. And we are not here to harm you. We've been here longer than humanity. And, that they've been waiting for him. He says they. So he then sleeps through the night and wakes up. No issues. But he remembers the dream. And he's like, what the hell kind of dream was that? I've never had a dream like that. One, he is not and never had been into the paranormal or alien kind of cryptids. His dad used to make make him, he thought his dad was telling him tall tales about a cannibalistic group of Sasquatch that lived on Mount Shasta as a kid, to scare him to stay in the campsite and not to go wandering off. But even at a young age, Kyle kind of blew it off, you know. So he is not, he's never even heard the word Lemurian. You know, he's like, what the hell is a Lemurian? And he's thinking about his dream all morning. He has his breakfast, but he had already made the decision to go and look in the area where the humming had come from. And he's like, all right, I've got, you know, a good trek ahead of me, probably a couple miles to get from Sulphur Spring to this Lake Sisson area. It is going to be, I am going to go up in elevation, so it is going to be a slower hike. But if I go now and I, you know, work the time right, I'll be back at my camp by dinner time. And that's all he's thinking of. He's like, I'll be back for, you know, dinner. And he starts hiking in. And for some reason, that dream just stayed with him. You know, we are Lemurian. We are here. We have been here. We are waiting for you, Kyle. And he's just beside himself, you know. And it is at that point, he said, Jeff, it really brought what the old stories my dad used to tell me, even though this thing did not look like a Bigfoot in my dream, but it really put me on edge about these Bigfoot that my dad talked about, these cannibalistic, you know, man-eating Bigfoot that lived in caves underground and such, and hunted, you know, campers, lone hikers, this and that. So he's on edge. But he's like, you know, whatever. I nothing's ever happened. Just my dreams messing with me. So now Kyle has decided, all right, I'm going to hike out there. I'm going to, you know, I've got X amount of time, X amount of hours. I'll be able to make it back here. And he knows approximately how long it'll take him. He said it should have taken me about roughly 2 to 2.5 hours, even though it's only about max 3 miles. But with the way the trails are cut, and there in some spots there aren't any trails, he's going to have to trailblaze, which he and his dad had made this journey to this area plenty of times before. So he knows how to get there. But he also knows that it's going to take him some time. And he had been gifted a watch from his parents during graduation 4 years prior to this. And it was a self-winding watch, no battery, something that he loved. He really cherished this watch. He actually still has it, and the watch does not work to this day. So he looks at his watch and he figures the time. He's like, all right, it is right now 11:45 a.m. I should get there right around 2, get back here. If I stay half hour, 45 minutes to an hour investigating, I'll be back here by 4:30, 5 o'clock by my camp. I'll bring some food with me, enough water. Let's do this. And he starts hiking. Well, he gets about halfway. And halfway would be to where the terrain gets real bad, where it would take another hour and a half to get to where he needed to get to. So this first part of the trek is not smooth sailing, but a hell of a lot smoother than what he was going to go through. Now, he then starts to notice this very strange feeling, like I'm being watched again. Almost like that first night that he started to have that feeling where he heard that humming noise. And so he kind of stops and he's looking around and he realizes, like, there is something out here with me. There's, this isn't in my head. There is genuinely something, and he's thinking mountain lion, maybe a mountain lion. He hadn't thought of bear yet because that comes very shortly. So he's like, shit, I'll pull out, he pulls out his little survival backpack rifle that he's got, and it's 22 long rifle. It's gonna scare something possibly. It's more or less, I'd rather have a 22 long rifle than a knife. But it's not, it's not 100%. You're not feeling 100% safe with this thing. But he felt safer. So he pulled it out. And he's like, I pulled the little rifle out. And I pulled my flare gun out. And he puts his backpack back on. And he's like, if anything fucks with me, he's like, I'm going to shoot with my 22 at it, and if it keeps coming, I'll shoot it with the flare gun. At least it'll be an impact and a flame, and a big, powerful. It's like a 12 gauge round to shoot out the flare, so it's loud. You're not killing anything with it, but you're gonna freaking hurt something. And so he's walking back. He decides, fuck this. I'm going back to camp. Whatever, there's something out here. And it's not just that watched feeling. It's that feeling that something is breathing down my neck. And just at that point, he starts to hear branches and twigs starting to break along the backside of him. Kind of turns to see if he can see anything, and he doesn't. And he, to this day, said, I made a fatal error. He goes, and I'm glad that it wasn't a mountain lion, because I'd be dead. He said, I turned my back and started walking. And he said, I don't know why I did that. My dad told me never to, if there's something ever out there, don't turn your back on it. And, don't run. So as he's kind of not speed walking, but he's walking quicker, he now starts to hear the noise louder. And it seems like it's on both sides of him. Almost like something's playing a game with him that he's not part of. And he can hear it above in the trees, on the ground. And he's seeing what he can make out is these brown streaks out of the peripheral of his eyes. And he said a couple of times he thought that he did see a quadruped running through the woods in front of him, like aside of him, but going past him. So there was a couple of times he thought something was going to be in front of him on that trail. And thank God there wasn't. He, at one point, hears this really kind of weird kind of groan. It wasn't a growl, and it wasn't any kind of other noise that he had ever heard. And he said in his own, his head, what the fuck? Like, and he started running. And he can see, at this point, he can see his campsite. And he said, the first thing I saw was my blue tarp tent, because it was that bright blue. He said, and then I saw my fire pit, and he goes, I was a distance still away, but I started to feel safer. And he saw one last peripheral something on the side of him. And he said what he saw was it went from quadruped to biped, stopped as he's, walking. It ran by and stopped and stood up. But he's not making eye contact with it. He's staying, but he's looking, and he sees it drop back down and go back the other way. He gets into his camp, and everything, the whole kind of game, whatever was out there, was gone. It was almost like his camp area was the safe zone or something. And for roughly that 45-minute time period was the only time since his nightmare, because that dream was a nightmare for him, was the only time that he hadn't thought about that dream. And we are Lemurians. We've been waiting for you. Whatever was playing games with him scared him enough to take that dream out of his head. And he gets to camp, and he's really freaked out. He's, debating on, am I leaving? If I leave, I've got a hike ahead of me. And he looks at his watch. And this is where Crystal had said during that time period when he was running, Crystal had said that when he looked at his watch, it was when he started to run away. But it was when he was in camp that he looked at his watch. And his watch was spinning ever so slowly, but it was spinning. And it stopped at like a really weird time. It was, 9 in the morning or 9 p.m. at night. But he knew that it could only have been no later than 4:30, 5 o'clock, no earlier than 4 o'clock. So he's like, what the hell is going on? And then he sees his watch do that, and he's like, all right, maybe there's some magnetic interference, something. Maybe I hit my watch on something. He doesn't know. But that was something that freaked him out, because he remembers looking at, because now he's planning on getting the hell out of here, and he's looking at his watch, and it's going real slow, and then it just stops. So he's like, all right, if I leave now, I'm not going to get anywhere close to where I camped to the midway point until way dark. And he's like, I don't want to be out here in the woods hiking in the dark. I'll start a fire. If things don't start to feel better by morning, I'll make the decision to leave then. And mind you, he's never had anything like this ever happen. He doesn't believe in aliens. He doesn't believe in Dogman. He doesn't believe in Bigfoot. His dad actually did believe in Bigfoot. They weren't just stories that he told him. He truly believes and knows that there are Bigfoot in the area of California that he's at, you know? Like, Claudia Ackley sued California because she saw Bigfoot in Mount Shasta. She sued them, not for money, but for freaking, you know, tell us that freaking Bigfoot are out here. So he doesn't want to be in the woods at night, walking with a flashlight. And he said, all right, I'll have dinner. I'll see how it plays out. If worse comes to worse, I'll stay up all night. I'll, you know, put myself against a tree to where I know nothing's going to get my backside. And I've got my flare gun. I've got my bear spray. I've got a large, you know, hunting knife. And I've got this 22. At least I have something. You know, it's a lot better than, you know, some people that go hiking or camping bring with them. And he's came to the conclusion, all right, he has dinner and he starts to calm down. So he has dinner and he waits as long as he can to fall asleep. He does not have any kind of fear at this point. It was almost like that day happened but didn't in his mind. And he still is weirded out about this to this day. You know, because he said, Jeff, that day, hiking out there and hiking back was one of the scariest parts of my experience. Seeing the watch spin was terrifying. He knew something was very wrong. He knew that it was, whatever was happening was something that he couldn't control. But that hike from Midway Point to Sisson Lake back to his camp was so terrifying. But the calmness that he felt that evening after still baffles him, because he said he didn't feel anything. He had dinner and he sat by his you know, fire and watched the fire blaze and you know, just relaxed. Crawled in his sleeping bag and went to bed. Like, it was almost like that day didn't occur. Even though it was and still is one of the most terrifying parts of this experience for him, the beginning of it. And he said, he doesn't know how long he had been asleep, but he knew he was asleep, but he knew he was awake, if that makes any sense. And that's what he said. Because the next thing he remembers crawling into his sleeping bag. He made sure the fire embers were down. There was no flame. It was just coal. He could feel a little bit of the heat radiating from the fire pit to his little tent. But he just crawls into his sleeping bag and, you know, got comfortable. He doesn't remember dozing off, but the next thing he remembers is opening his eyes and looking around and realizing, I'm not in my tent. And realizing that it's really bright. And it's not daylight bright. This is a white, like a white, bright light. Excuse me. And he realizes at this point that he's in this room. He looks and he's like, I was in this just large room. You know, the dimensions were huge. Like bigger than a large bedroom. probably the size of, a good sized living room, just a huge open room. And he's looking around, and it's a blank slate white, just white walls, nothing on them, white ceiling. And he's looking, and he's laying there, and he's like, what the hell am I laying on? I'm chilled. He's chilled now. And he looks down, and he can see the floor. The floor is white. And he sees that he's on this metal kind of bed table. Sorry, my pencil hit the mic. I apologize, guys. So he realizes he's on this like metal bed table thing. And he's looking around, and he looks down, and he realizes that it's just floating in the air. That there are no legs. There are no attachments to the ceiling holding it up. It's just suspended in air, like 4 or 5 feet off the ground. And all of a sudden, what he dreamt about, Lemurians walk in this room, 2 of them. And one just looks at him, and he doesn't see any lips moving, but he can hear. He can hear it communicating with him. It says, hello, Kyle. My name is. And he remembers the name, but he doesn't remember if it was like. So he said, I remember the name because I put 2 words together to remember it. And it was like open book, plain check. But it was like a weird ABOC something check, that just this really weird name. But he remembers that it sounded like open book, was the first part. Blank, plain check, And he said it sounded almost Native American, like in a Native American name. And it was almost in that Native American dialect that it was spoken to him. But he said, you are safe. We have been waiting for you. We are the Lemurians. We have been waiting. You are safe. And he, says, where am I? How did I get here? And the one that's behind the one that he can hear talking to him is almost nondescript, just staring at him. And the one that is talking to him, as he is communicating, is kind of making like facial features, but not really, but more so than this other one. And that's when he gets a really good look at them. And he can see just how tall they are. He figured, I'm on a bed here, this metal tabled bed, whatever it is, 5 feet in the air. I'm now sitting up. So, what's my upper torso? 2-3 feet. So I'm, 8 feet sitting up, 7 to 8 feet sitting up. And this thing is even with me, staring right at me. Very tall, gangly, just scrawny, but these white robes and no hair, large kind of Spock ears, and the bluest eyes that he had ever seen. They were this like ocean blue, not like a teal blue, but like the bluest sky blue or ocean blue you can imagine. Think that, but they were bluer than that. And that's his exact term. They were bluer than the most blue that you could think of. An unnatural blue. And he said something like, there is much to show you. We have to leave now. We will be back, or something like that. And it walks out the room. And when it did, it was almost like the wall slid. And these two creatures walked out, and the wall slid back in place. And he's looking at the room dimension, and he roughly thought the rooms from floor to ceiling would be like 15 feet. It was a complete square. So, the walls were probably 30 to 40 feet. It was just this big empty room with this table in the middle. And he's sitting there and he's like, what the hell is going on? Is this the dream still? And he remembers turning to get down. And as he turned and he's looking at the walls went from this white to this very ancient looking rock, but it was smooth. The ceilings now were, natural cavern, I guess would be the best way to describe it. But you could tell that it was honed and chiseled, and it was flat. It was not done by nature. It was not done by water. It was not done by age. But it was whatever or whoever these Lemurians or the reptilians or whoever prior to, it was done craftedly, like handcrafted. And he's looking at the walls, and he touches the bed, and he looks down, and the bed is now a stone. Like, it is now stone as well. So everything in this room is now stone. This weird brown colored cavern stone, whatever. But he's looking at the walls, and he can see, how rock has like little indentations and crevices, but he can see things in it. And he kind of jumps down, and he walks over, and he's looking, and he, knowing where he is, thinks Native American petroglyphs or hieroglyphs and such. But he realizes that this is not Native American. He's seen Native American art, at school, in museums and everything. This is Egyptian. These are, chiseled out pictures of the pyramid, chiseled out picture of what the Sphinx would be. And they're not small. These are huge, like he said, the pyramids, there was like a picture of the pyramids, but each pyramid was 2 to 3 feet carved out into this wall. The Sphinx was like 4 or 5 feet in the wall. And there was like little things, diagrams around it, things in the air, things that were like flying. There were like chariots. And he's just baffled at what he's seeing. And he remembers distinctly the Sphinx and the pyramids, but he remembers seeing like carts. He's seen flying things, but they weren't like UFOs. Almost like a shooting star or something, but not a star, obviously. Just something strange in what would be above the pyramids. And it was all around. So there was different little pictures of things all on all 4 sides of him. And he gets up and he remembers kind of roughly where that door was to go in and out, where these Lemurians went in and came out. And he puts his hand on the wall. And the wall isn't cold like stone would be underground or in a cave. He now, in his dream, but it's not a dream, he now knows that he's awake, that this, wall is warm, to the touch, and he can feel like a vibration through it, like almost like a pulsing. And he figures that this must be the door. And he starts to walk around, just feeling the wall, trying to feel a way out. And, looking at more of these kind of pictures and things. And there are pictures of, people or cryptids. He said there was things like on one side of the wall, away from the Sphinx and away from, like, the Sphinx and the pyramids were on one wall. And on this wall, there was another thing, a mural, almost like a mural. And on the back side of the wall behind him, it was like a mountain kind of scape area, but there were large creatures that resembled humans, two-legged, but some had very large heads, some had very small heads, some looked like animals walking on two legs, just like ancient petroglyphs and hieroglyphs would look like. And he hears this kind of vibrational noise, and the two Lemurians come in and get him, and they say, "We are ready to take you and show you things. There is one more room we need to bring you before we go any further, though." And he looks, and he can feel this fear, kind of like, what the hell is going to happen to me? They walk out of this area, and he is now in this bright hallway. So what that white room looked like, and then transformed into the stone room, is now the hallway. And it's just this white, long hallway. Floor's white. Ceilings are white. And they start to walk. He is, not in any way shackled or in any kind of restraints. And he's just walking freely. He distinctly remembers, like, having a conversation like, "Are you going to hurt me? What is going to happen to me?" And he said that the one that never talked to him in that room initially said this is the only time he heard this other one talk. And it was in a very, he said he got a headache when this one communicated with him. But it said, "We are not going to hurt you, but you need to do something before you see anymore." And the voice was such a different feeling inside. It was this loud, just powerful voice. But he got a headache, and he can't describe the voice. He said it, I was like, was it bassy? Was it this? Was it that? And he said, I can't describe it. There is no word for it other than it gave me a headache and it scared me, but it wasn't like a bass noise. Like this one, the first one, had a soothing kind of, this one was almost never meant to speak because of whatever. And as it did that, the one that spoke to him prior put his hand on his shoulder, and then he could hear, "You will be okay." And that other one kind of shut up, and they led him down the hallway a little more. And on the opposite side of where he came in, the Lemurian creature waved its hand against a blank wall. There were no kind of boxes or doorknobs or anything. It was just like it knew where to go. Maybe their vision, they can see but it waved its hand, and this door slid open, and they all walked in. Kyle said that as he was walking in, it was almost as he trusted the one with the soothing voice so much that he followed him. Not knowing what was in that room. There could have been, like some sort of torture device, or, a man eating Bigfoot, like his dad warned him about. But the trust, so he just followed him, knowing, like, I'm going to be okay. And the door shut, and he said, we will be right back. Don't be afraid. And these two left. He doesn't remember how much time went by. It was a period of time. Like, we're not talking minutes. Like, it could have been a couple hours. It could have been a day. But it was a long time. And the whole time of this that he was missing, that he was down there, he was never hungry. He never got thirsty. He never got hungry. There was no kind of any lacking of, you don't eat for a couple days, you're going to be hungry. You don't drink something for a couple days, you're thirsty. But that never happened. He is sitting there. He believes he had fallen asleep at one point, because the next thing he knows, this room was empty. There was this kind of like rock kind of area that he sat on. It wasn't a chair, but it was like just a big slab of rock. This big square rock off to the side in the corner there. And he sat on that, and he believes that he had fallen asleep there. Because the next thing he remembers was he had been sitting there for a very long time, and that's when his nerves started messing with him and his brain started to mess with him. And the next thing he remembers is there are two, not of these Lemurians, but these lizard-like creatures staring at him, above him, looking down at him, and he is on this table, and they are inserting needles into him. They had taken blood, and these were not small doctor gauge needles. These were needles as large and as thick as pens and pencils. He has, to this day, a spot on his spine where a needle had gone into his spine and taken what he believes spinal fluid. They had taken blood. He thinks that they had taken even possibly bone marrow, because they were stabbing him, but I guess surgically, taking his life essence from him, probably to study, maybe to duplicate. He doesn't know. But he did say possibly to even duplicate me. Like one day he goes missing again, and there's Kyle. Oh, it's Kyle, but it's not Kyle. It's a duplicate. During the process, one of the reptilians they did not speak to him. One of them kind of hissed to the other one. But there was no communication. Even though they were doing what they were doing to him with precision, they were very rough. They were not gentle. Like when they stuck him with a needle, it was in, but it was precise of where it was going. Just no bedside manner would be the best way to describe it. And they end up, a Lemurian the one that he initially talked to with the soothing voice came in. And these two reptilians looked at him and they left the room. And the Lemurian kind of said, thank you. I have much to show you. And Kyle said, well, what is going on? Are you guys going to kill me? Am I going to die here? Am I ever going to go home? He's just listing question after question after question because he's petrified. He's in pain. He's in pain now. But he's terrified because he thinks he's going to die. Who wouldn't? And the Lemurian put his hand, and he remembers the hand was just so large. The fingers, they weren't girthy, but they were long and wide but narrow, like the fingers. So just like, a hand like that big around, but very narrow. And it put its hand on his shoulder and said, you will go home. You will be okay. We do not want to hurt you. And as it touched his shoulder and his body, all the pain that he had just endured was gone. He did not feel any of that pain. The crazy thing about that whole part of the pain process is when he did eventually go home and show his girlfriend his back, and that was the main reason why she believed him, there was a wound, a hole, where that needle had gone into his spine. But any open wound like that would be probably infected during this process, bleeding, but he had no pain and it was not bleeding and it didn't get infected. They exit this room and he's looking at this whole area, and instead of being that white hallway, it is now this corridor, this tunnel, this underground tunnel. And he says, where am I? Are we underground? Or am I on a spaceship? Where am I? And the Lemurian said, we are Lemurians. And it kept repeating that. Crystal said that it did keep repeating that. But Kyle emphasized the amount of times it did. We built these tunnels. We were here before humans. We were here before dinosaurs. And, we were here when this, whatever, these are our tunnels. This is our. And they're walking down this just long corridor. There's no lights. There's no lights like fixtures, but it's light. It's bright, It's not dark. You're not like you'd think in a cave it'd be dark, but it's not. And they get to this section of this hall and they go into this kind of elevated area. They walk in and they go up. And he remembers going up because he could feel it. And he doesn't know how far they went up, but it was a couple of floors because he could see this rounded glass kind of shuttle thing that went up. And instead of being a corridor, it was a white hallway with glass-faced rooms. And he's like, where are we? And this creature said, this is what I wanted to show you. These are our experiments. This is what we do. And he remembers looking in these kind of rooms, and the rooms were roughly the size of his room that he was in. So like 15 foot from floor to ceiling, 30-foot wall, 30 by 30 by 30 by 30. So what is that? 120 square foot, I think. And he sees these tanks. So there are these large tanks in the middle of this room. The first room that they come to, he looks in and he remembers thinking about the Sphinx, because this creature that he saw resembled the Sphinx, almost feline-like, suspended in this kind of cylinder, bipedal, because it had arms and it had legs, and it was furry, but it's suspended in this kind of liquid. He remembers looking at it, and he said the thing that caught him off guard was, as he's looking at it, you got a wall and you're looking at this tank. He said, Jeff, I'm staring at this and I'm getting it. I'm taking it all in. And, it is a feline-like creature. And there are other tanks in the room with other creatures in it, the same kind, same. He said there was about 4 or 5 different tanks in this room with a feline-like creature in each one. But he said, as he's looking at the one that initially he caught his eye, and he's staring at it, he's trying to make out the detail, and it does have it has pointed ears, but not large dog ears. He can see a feline face. Even though it is hairy, he could tell that it was muscular. But he saw these yellow eyes staring back at him. And he said, when I'm looking right at these eyes, Jeff. And he said they fucking blinked. He said, it's in this liquid. And these eyes blinked at me. And he started to get emotional. Like, he literally started to get emotional at that point in our conversation. Like, you could hear a sadness. Like, he got sad when he said that. He goes, it fucking blinked, man. He said it was in this liquid. He said, I don't know how it was breathing, but it blinked, and it looked like it had this, like, help me look in its face. But then he, as he's looking at it, he could see its fingers, and it had claws. So if it was outside of that vat or that cylinder, it would be dangerous. And they walk down, a couple more, and he's seeing different things. He's seeing like humanoid things, what appeared to be a human, but very strange looking. There was some crawler-like creatures in tanks, and then they keep going. There was one part where he thought he had seen what looked like a woman in the back. There was no tanks in this room. But the room was different. There was something different about the room. All these rooms are white and brightly lit. But this one room where he thought he saw something go into the shadows, it appeared to be like a naked woman kind of run into the darkness. And he kind of peered at the glass wall, and he's looking and trying to see, if it is a girl or a woman, or, get her out. And he saw these like red eyes kind of glow in the darkness, the shadowed area of this room. And for some reason, it wasn't illuminated. He could see in from the light of the hallway. But it ran up to the glass and hit the glass. And it was what appeared to be at one point a human woman. But different. It did have long, straggly hair. It had a woman's physique, breasts and this and that. But it wasn't human anymore. It whatever it was a genetic freak. It was a creature. And he said, I know that was a human. And this was really getting him emotional because he was just, room after room, it was something different. There was something else in these vats and these empty rooms and this and that. But when that woman hit that wall, he jumped back. And as he jumped back, the Lemurian was right behind him. And he kind of hit it and turned and looked. And it was staring at him, looking down at him. And it smirked. Didn't say anything mentally because it was communicating mentally. But as it looked down at him and could see his fear and his confusion, it smirked at him. And it put its hand on his back and pushed him away from that area. And they kept going. And he kept seeing different creatures and different things. They go up one more floor. A couple other, whatever. However deep they were, he thinks the initial part was, he believes he was 6 stories below the ground. Possibly more. Because of the distance it took. They get off this one, and he sees this chamber. I apologize for hitting pause a couple of times. There, people walk by. It's 12:30 at night. People walk by with those stupid speakers blaring music, so I apologize. That's why I had to hit pause. So they get to the next level or 2 levels up, however far. He looks at these rooms, and the first couple of rooms they come to, there's nothing. And as they're walking down this hall, and this is where things are a little different from Crystal, because Crystal didn't, know everything that was said, and he didn't share everything with his sister Jackie. But as they're walking down, he's realizing, hey, these walled off, rooms, there's nothing in them. There are empty vats. And at this point, he's starting to think, I think these things are lying to me. I'm going to end up in one of these vats. And, he's starting to get real scared at this point, like, where are they taking me? And at that point, when he's thinking this, instantly, it'd be like you or I saying, holy shit, something bad's gonna happen. And as we're thinking that, something in our, something pops in our mind, and it's this soothing voice saying, Kyle, you are fine. Nothing is going to happen to you. You are safe. You will go home. And he looks, and, the Lemurian is right aside of him, but no facial feature again. The only time he saw any kind of, real facial feature that he could identify would be that frickin' smirk when that woman creature thing hit the wall. And And even then, he couldn't make out a lot of detail. So they're walking, and they get about midway, and all of a sudden, a door opens off to the side, like where they were initially. And he kind of flinches, and out come 3 of these reptilian things. And they're walking, and they walk by Kyle and this Lemurian. There's no acknowledgement between the Lemurian and the reptilians. But they look at him almost with like a disgust. And they are huge. He said the largest was at least 2 to 3 feet taller than me. A foot to 2 feet taller than the Lemurian. The smallest was about the same size as the Lemurian. But there was no recognition between the Lemurian or the reptilian, and they just walked by each other. And they kept walking and walking, and they get almost to the end, and he looks on one side, looks on that side, and he sees more vats. And he sees what now we call dogmen in these vats. Kind of just like these feline ones and like the crawler ones. There was, they had snouts. But he said there was a couple in these vats that resembled what we know as dogmen. But they seemed to have like plates or something along their spine. They did not look like, they almost look like an amalgamation of, different creatures. It had like a canine-like head, but these, instead of looking out like the feline one did to him, their heads were up. They couldn't see their eyes. It was almost like they were in like a coma state, just up. And he said they had these like, just some sort of something coming off their spine on their backs. And like a fin, but not like a huge fin. Just something that looked like a weapon. Like if you hit it in the back, it wouldn't hurt it. And then there were some other strange looking canine-like things in the other rooms. Different sizes. Some had hair, some did not. Once again, they're all in that liquid. And they all were not, once again, on that one level below, or however levels below they were. The other ones were they were like awake in these vats. These dog-like, canine-like creatures were up. Like their snout was going upward and their arms were out and they were just suspended in this liquid. He said that was the strangest thing because they weren't moving. But he could tell that they were alive. He doesn't know how. He didn't see any blinking. He didn't see any kind of movement, but just this feeling of them being alive and, him thinking how dangerous these things could be if they ever were out in the forest and such. And then he started to remember these things chasing him on the sides of the forest. And he's like, I wonder if these or the feline ones or what. And if it, because now it's starting to add up that was not a mountain lion. That was not bear. Whatever was messing with him and playing that game with him that he was not a participant in, or a willing participant, they must have came from this area. They get to the next end of that, and he said the Lemurian once again put his hand on his shoulder, and he felt like a fear. He was afraid because he thought that this was it. This was the end of the game for him. And he said, "You will be home soon." And they went up, and he thought, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. They're walking down this long corridor. There's no rooms. At this point, it's just this all solid wall. But for some reason, this corridor is longer than the couple that he had just went down. Double of what the others were. And no rooms, just solid wall. And then he sees these glares, you know how glass glares, and they're walking and they're empty, they're empty, they're empty, they're empty. And almost 3/4 of the way down, he looks and he jumps back because shackled in the air, and this is something that he never even told his girlfriend about, because this one really, the last 2 cages, or whatever you want to call them, really fucked him up. Because the last one was, obviously I shared that, but this one, he saw there were these suspension chains or whatever, and he does not know how or what these chains or whatever were made of, because if these creatures, depending on, if they were outside and this was human material, these things would have easily torn through it. But he looks in and he sees this white creature, and it was almost like he said white because that's the best way he can describe it. A white light of creature. And its arms were suspended. So I'm standing up really quick. So its arms were out like this, and it chained and onto the wall, and its legs were almost, so it was, a crucifix without the cross. So it's being held up by this, and the legs, the chains or suspension, whatever, are pulling its legs down. So it's tight. It is suspended. And it's this white, bright, humanoid, whatever. And he's looking at it, and he said, "Jeff, it had wings, but it wasn't scary looking." And, right, hearing him tell me fucked me up, because the way he explained it, and I don't know how to really explain it, because right now it's getting me, the way he explained it to me is the way I'm explaining it to you guys. But he did start crying. And for some reason, I not it was a white, bright, white light entity with wings, crucified by chains. And he said it was an angel. He said, 100%, Jeff, I believe that was an angel. How did these things capture an angel? What are they doing? Who are these things? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't an angel. Maybe it was something they created. And then the last room, and this creature, I don't even feel comfortable calling it a creature, because something in my heart says it wasn't. Just the way he explained it. And this is going to sound stupid, but have you ever had somebody explain something to you where you know what they're telling you is what it is, but it doesn't make sense? So it's in this identical room that he was in, like 15 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet by 30 feet. And then he's just staring at this thing. And he if he knows Crystal will hear it, and his sister is now going to hear it, but he just couldn't say anything about it at that time because he thought he was going crazy after all this. The next room is, now he looks in, and mind you, that room next to it was 15 foot floor to ceiling. This, it looked like it went down 10 feet and went up another 10 feet and was at least double. So 35 feet floor to ceiling, 60 feet, 60 feet by 60 feet by 60 feet. Huge room. But identical to the other one, just that much bigger. And there, on the ground, sitting there, were these two shackled. Their feet were, their butts were on the ground. Their feet were on the ground. Their knees up in the air. And there was some sort of chain-like shackle. And their arms were down like this. Just shackled to the ground. Two of them. And when Crystal shared that with me, it really didn't affect me, But now thinking about it, I'm thinking more along the lines of, 100% probably a Nephilim. But is this the way the ones that are bound underneath the Tigris in Euphrates, is that how they're bound too? And are there, how many of these things are bound and restrained like that? Hopefully all of them, but obviously not. And he sees these two in this room, and it didn't affect him. That did not affect him like that second to last room did. And I have a hard time saying that word, but the way he described it made me think angel too. And now I'm really starting to believe that these reptilians, these Lemurians, these kind of alien-like entities are demons coming from a portal, bringing them straight to hell wherever. We don't know what hell looks like. It could look like outer space. Who the fuck knows, man? But this shit is... People have been talking about this for thousands of years. So it's got to be legit, But he sees these two huge creatures chain, boom, boom. And he hears this just ungodly roar. And the next thing he remembers is he's in his tent. He gets up and he looks around. He is in pain. His body hurts again. Mind you, when he's walking through with that Lemurian, he is in not pain. There's no pain. But now his spine hurts. His arms are sore. His legs are sore. His, anywhere they had stabbed him with those things, those needles, he is sore. He looks at his watch, and his watch is stopped. Permanently stopped. At like 9:30. He can't, tried to wind it, tried to rewind it. He's brought it to actually a jeweler to fix. They can't fix it. They can't get it to run again. For some reason, it will not run. But he keeps it because to him, it's his evidence that this shit really happened to him. Because when he woke up, he, is like, he doesn't know what day it is. He doesn't know how much time passed. He just knows his watch doesn't work. He's in pain and he's hungry now. And he's thirsty. So he eats, he drinks. He goes to the bathroom and whatnot. And he heads out. And he gets to the midway point and he camps one last time. And he's back to his car. And he's home. And when he walks through the door, his family is hysterical. Oh my God, you're alive, yada yada. And he's like bewildered. He doesn't know, like, what the hell? I've only been gone 7 days max. He's thinking 6. He's legit thinking 6 because that's mathematically what makes sense to him. You've been gone for 11 days, bud. Where were you? What happened? And then to come to find out that park rangers had gone up looking for him about the 8th or 9th day to that exact location. His dad said, this is where we go. This is the camp spot that we always go to. This is where he'll be. Go up there and see. They are obviously not hiking in. They're probably on a UTV or an ATV, so they're up there in 10 hours, 6 hours, whatever. Maybe they even flew a helicopter. Who knows? But they got there. They didn't even find his tent. They didn't even see his fire pit. There was nothing, no anything in the exact location he was at, where he woke up at. But they didn't see his tent. Nothing. So, about a week after the return, he returns. He isn't the same. Obviously, who would be? Mentally, he's trying to figure out what happened. He's still having a hard time dealing with 5 days gone. He legit thinks that it was, 6 days, but now it's 11. Where was I really with underground in that freaking world for 5 days? How didn't these rangers see me? Why didn't they see my camp? If they really went to where Dad said I was, they would have seen the blue tarped tent. Obviously, who's going to act, who's not going to act weird? So they have his sister, his girlfriend, and him, and a few other people have a campfire or a little bonfire. Their property, they have not a huge yard, but a decent sized backyard where they can have a little fire pit, and just hang out in their backyard. They weren't drinking that night, and that's after his sister's friends leave, is when he shares what happened that night. He left out a lot of different things. The angelic thing, whatever that was, a lot of the pain that he went through. And roughly, a month goes by. 2 months. Oh no, almost fall time. Crystal, Jackie, and a few of their friends all decide, let's go find out where Kyle saw this shit. And his sister, told quite a few friends so all of his sister's friends think poor Kyle's crazy. And a few of them go up to the Northgate trailhead and they walk in. Obviously, they're not going to get to where Sulphur Spring is because they don't have 2 days to hike. But they just wanted to walk around and look around in that area and such. And they're up there for a little bit. One of the guy friends is over by this stream area. And he goes missing. They're looking all over for him. They can't find him. Yelling for him. They're way away from where this Kyle's event took place. They're in an area where Kyle felt safe and secure. Where he had no bad feelings. Now, this kid is missing. 16-year-old kid. A few of them stay up there. A few of them rush into town. Notify the police. We can't find our friend. Couple sheriff. Some forest rangers go up in there. I think it was like 7 or 8 hours after the fact. The kid just comes stumbling out of the woods. Not a recognition or not a recollection of what happened. He just comes walking out of the same area he was last seen by the stream. Just comes walking out. Doesn't, to this day, remember what happened. There's no, lost time. There's nothing. He has nothing. No memories. He remembers it being sunny. And it was like he stepped through this portal or something, because the next thing he knows, it's pitch black and there are people looking for him. And he can't find his friends yet because it's pitch black. During this process, a park ranger goes missing. This is all in that time zone in Redding, California, 96, from like late May to late June. There is a fugitive on the run in this location. Please be careful. Please don't go to this area. Please don't do this. No mention of his crimes. No mention of this. No mention of the park ranger that went missing either. That mysteriously turned up a couple weeks later. Nothing. No mention of it. But Kyle, his sister, and Crystal doesn't know firsthand, but Kyle knows firsthand. Because the sister had gotten questioned a couple different times. About how far, where their friend got last seen. But somehow this ranger just pops up again. Boop. He's there. But we don't know what happened to him. We don't know how much time was missing. We just know that he's now fine, I assume. I don't know. But then just as mysteriously as that, please keep your eye out. Please be safe. There is an there is a fugitive on the run. If you see helicopters, that's probably why. If you see this, that's probably why. Just as quick as that started, it ended just as quick. and as mysteriously. Because they never said, fugitive caught. There's never any kind of mention of that. And if you lived in that area in 96, you will remember it. And, man, I don't even know. I know that the Lemurian race supposedly has a tie to Atlantis and Mu and other things like that. And there is a woman leader of the Lemurian who does not like the reptilians, who does not like this and that in Dulce. But I don't know, the more I learn about this and the more I hear about this stuff, I really think that these aliens people are seeing our devils, demons, whatever you want to call them. Not devils, demons. And these portals are the way they're coming in and out. You know? To me, it makes sense. Maybe that's why there's some under the ocean that it shoot up out of the ocean and fly around and go back, because there's a portal there, or a portal happened to open there, and that's where they came out of. I don't know. Anyway, that is all of Kyle's experience. Instead of being third hand, heard from Kyle to his sister, to the best friend, to me. Kyle, to me, to you. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. After all, it is your support that keeps this channel growing and going. And honestly, what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there, and they are dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth. And God bless.